Hi friends, my this is my presentation on older adult oral video presentation by myself, Francis Songa. Based on my interview with my interviewee, Solange, I chose Stage 6, Intimacy versus Isolation, which is young adulthood, ages 18 to 40. Stage 6 is about young adults dating and seeking close relationships with other young adults. Solange's young adulthood stage, had the most impact in her life. She was born in Cameroon in a village called Shamila. Solange lived in Cameroon until she was 30 years old. She got married in her late 20s, and it set the tone for her adulthood. Solange was also encountering emerging adulthood, which is young people become more independent from their families of origin and encounter stressors relating to forming adult identity, moving away from home, going to college, or getting a job. At 18 years old, Solange attended an all-women's Catholic university, a boarding school, on a scholarship. While attending school, she met her boyfriend, fell in love, and got pregnant. Because she got pregnant, Solange had to drop out of college. Due to the rules of the university and following Catholic religion, single women could not attend school if they were pregnant. Growing up in a low-resourced rural environment places children at heightened risk for exposure to childhood adversity, events, and behaviors that compromise children's physical and physiological well-being and development. Being pregnant, unmarried, and dropping out of school brought dishonor to the family. Solange's parents did not approve of the relationship because they felt her boyfriend was not marriage material. He came from a poor family and was raised by his mother. The boyfriend wanted to marry her. Solange was forced to end the relationship because the parents were helping to take care of her baby daughter. Unable to go back to the university, Solange moved to the capital city, Yaoundé, to look for a job. She left her daughter, Amy, with her parents. She had a lot of jobs, worked as a maid, and had several secretarial jobs in both the public and private sectors of government. She had another daughter, Betty, by this time. Later on, she met her future husband, William, a Peace Corps volunteer, at the same company where she worked. They began dating and then got married. After getting married, William adopted Solange's two daughters, Amy and Betty, and they became a family. Then William's Peace Corps assignment in Cameroon came to an end, so the family moved to William's hometown in Idaho, in the United States. Upon moving to the United States, Solange attempted to apply for citizenship at the American Embassy in Cameroon. A government official there convinced Solange to experience the U.S. first, before getting citizenship. They warned her about the high levels of racial discrimination towards Black people or African Americans. Solange and William had their third child in 1980, and they were living in Idaho, in a predominantly white community at the time. As a biracial family, they were not welcomed and were shunned against in the community. It was uncomfortable to live there, so they moved back to Cameroon. Later on, the family moved to Maryland. William got a job at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. Perceived racial discrimination is prevalent and pernicious during emerging adulthood, associated with problems like psychological health. Solange found a job in retail. The income she made, she would give it to William to put into the bank account to help support the family. Because the income was not enough, she felt discouraged and stopped working. William did not agree for her to stop working. The disagreement led to a huge fight where he put Solange in a psychiatric hospital. In the hospital, the doctors realized she was mentally stable, so they released her and she went back home to her family. Solange overcame a lot of obstacles, and it led to divorcing William in 1992 and raised her kids alone. When traumatic events happen during young adulthood, the disproportionate representation and enhanced accessibility of the memory may serve to organize autobiographical memories of other life events, thereby structuring the narratives temporarily and thematically by providing reference points for the timing and meaning of other life events and further shaping an individual's identity. Solange applied and received her American citizenship, continued working in government, found a job with the Department of Navy, where she still works there, and received a certification as a certified nurse and assistant, working part-time in a hospital. Psychosocial crisis resolution. Intimacy versus isolation. Psychosocial crisis. Intimacy. Young adults are interested in being intimate and being close to a love interest. They learn and experience the relationship process with their love interests, such as commitment and feeling safe. Love. They learn about give and take without risking their identities. Isolation. If young adults are unsuccessful to build an intimate relationship with their love interests, they are at greater risk of being alone, loneliness, or isolated, which could lead to depression as they move into adulthood. Romantic relationship involvement is a significant event in the development of emerging adults and can confer a number of mental and physical health benefits. Solange made her life with William, whom she believed was her soulmate. He adopted Solange's two daughters, Amy and Betty, and they had two more children, Peter and Sean. They were a family. Systems theory perspective, ecological. Solange's issues of diversity and difference shaped her life experiences by coming from a country that was colonized by France. European French people lived in Cameroon. She was exposed to the French, born and followed Catholicism, spoke two languages, native tribal language at home, spoke French in school and in public, and assimilated to the way of life there. Came from a traditional African family where her father was the head of the family. Because she got pregnant while in university, Solange's father felt attending an all-girls school was about learning to become pregnant or women's business, as quoted by Solange, not about education. In Cameroon, there might have been some form of racism, but nowhere near similar to the racism in the United States. Solange did not experience, nor did she know the gravity of racism until she moved to Idaho. Emerging adults of African Americans must deal with challenging social contexts as they begin to interface social institutions that are potentially hostile, resulting in perceived racial discrimination and stress. Oppression shaped Solange's life experience, experiencing sexism at home and the social class she came from, and experiencing sexism limited her from getting potential jobs in the government because she was a woman. At the time, more men worked in the government than women. She also experienced sexism due to low wage pay based on the jobs that she worked at. She experienced sexism from her husband, William. He believed that women were inferior to men, believed that women were not equal to men. He would sabotage her job applications and references from getting a professional job, despite the fact that Solange was well-skilled in government. William believed men in general, should have distinguished jobs. She suffered from prejudice because of her racial ethnicity, being African, not being an American. Solange refused to let society at the time hold her back. She believed in herself and her worth, so she kept moving forward in her life and succeeded. Early experiences with perceived racial discrimination may be a critical period that shapes trajectories of psychological distress. Systems theory perspective continued. Being born in an African culture really set the tone for Solange's life. Her family was a patriarchal dominated, meaning male-oriented or male-dominated, where her father was the provider and he led the family. Her mother was a traditional woman, a mother and a wife who stayed home and took care of the family. Solange's father had a say on how his daughter should be raised, to be a virgin, following Catholic beliefs, and have some education in order to be a potential wife or marriage material. All these things would reflect the family in a positive way, or all these factors would reflect the family in a positive way. Solange's African culture believed in arranged marriages. Father had to choose a suitable mate for their daughter or son from their social class, even though her parents were unmarried when Solange was born. If a child was born outside of wedlock, the parents had to go to court and put down unknown or give the grandfather's name on the birth certificate, again to keep with Catholic beliefs. To some degree, Solange married a man, William, who was like her father. Her father, too, had a traditional view about women, being that women were not equal to men. Black men endorsed hyper-masculine norms. For example, cultural masculine norms, an endorsement associated with dominance, independence, and aggression. Solange's family owned a bakery in their village and made the best bread. Solange and her siblings were taught to bake, cook, work ethic, and being responsible. As existentialism theory perspective. According to Rogers, as existentialism focuses on the meaning of life and people's views on existence and teaches people they have control over their lives. People are cognitive beings who can think critically about who they are and who they would like to be, but society also influences these thinking processes by selling stereotypes and images of success and happiness tend to allow these images to dictate how they view themselves as well as how they perceive happiness and well-being. Human motivation to live can be sometimes painful and unrewarding, whereas predicting human behavior is difficult. People are constantly growing and making choices that can change their lives, and the choices are influenced by social surroundings. As existentialism theory perspective would be hard to apply to Solange's African cultural background. African culture and traditions and other non-industrialized societies are historically part of a collectivism society, which is shared cultural history that's emphasized in family obligations, or where the family unit is first before self. The self, or individualism society, which is focused on self-development and leisure during emerging adulthood. This way of life is common in industrialized countries like the United States and other Western cultures. Her cultural background heavily influenced her upbringing as a young adult. She grew up in a collectivistic society. As a young adult, looked to her husband to lead the family, but realized her husband was not supportive. As she got older, she had to learn to rely on herself. There is limitation because she is part of two societies, which is collectivism and individualism societies. Despite being the firstborn of her parents, who were unmarried at the time,